Welcome to the South by East podcast.
Welcome to the South by East podcast, where we discuss culture, the scriptures, and everything in between, and how they impact Southeast Topeka with your co-hosts, Jonathan Sublett and Brail Watson.
Welcome back to South by East Season 2 Generations.
Yes,
and if you hadn't noticed, we have been kind of running down the educational food chain as far as like how the ladder is set up. And now we're getting closest to that interpersonal, that funnel down. And I'm really excited for who we have here today. And we almost have kind of a panel going. John, why don't you let them know who we got coming?
Yeah, today we have two paraprofessionals who are going to join us. One is Hannah Alison, and she actually leads the Union for Paraprofessionals in Lawrence. And then we have Deidre Augusto, who's a paraprofessional in the Topeka Public School System. And so I am excited about both of them. Mm-hmm. And actually, Deidre actually worked with my kids.
Yeah, that's so cool.
She actually worked with my kids. And so we have this personal connection.
Wow.
So I'm interested to hear that take and that perspective that she brings, and just working with that sector of students who need a little bit extra help, but or sometimes not seen on the same level as you said, a teacher or whatever else.
Right.
And so, man, I can't wait to dive into this. I hope you're excited and ready.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. I'll be behind the camera. So we're going to go into that interview now in the intersection.
Hey, welcome South by East fam, back to the intersection. And I'm here today with my friends Deidre Augusto and Hannah Alison. And so they are paraeducators in our Kansas educational system. And we wanted them on today to talk about their experience in this whole chain. This season, we've been digging deep into our educational system and trying to get a broad perspective of it. So thank you, ladies, for joining us today in the intersection.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Now, when I say that term, paraeducators, people don't understand what that means. There's all these different theories of what that is. What are some common misconceptions about paraeducators?
I think it's that we are not educators. Like, they think of us as just like the babysitter, and like the teachers are certified. Like, they get paid from all year round, but we don't. But we don't get, I feel like we don't get paid for what we deserve. Like, we do twice the work, but don't get enough of recognition.
Man, what about you, Hannah?
Yeah, I would say the same, that a lot of times people don't see us as educators, and they don't realize that sometimes we're the one adult that a student can trust at school. And we work really directly. I don't know exactly the specifics of your work, and I'm excited to hear more about it, but in the work I've done as a paraeducator, we work really directly with one student, and so sometimes we are the only adult in the building that the student really can get to know and really rely on, and that is just like, it's such an important job in the school, and we're not paid or treated often as though that job is important.
Yeah, honestly, what I think is one of the problems, it's probably a failure in some ways of our educational system, is we have forgotten the meaning of para. Para means alongside. So when you talk about working directly with one student, you're the alongside educator. You are the person that walks beside that student. And all of us need people who walk beside us in different areas of life. And I think because we have taken that term para and used it as a diss, or a disability, or a less than, rather than a function in a descriptor of what y'all guys do in your daily roles. And so I can see how and I just think we have forgotten our prefixes and our suffixes, and that leads to some of the problems we see with what y'all guys stated. What is one thing, we're going to talk some more today, but what is one thing that you would like our listeners, our viewers, to take away from this interview?
Trying to think for a
I
second.
know. I'm like, that's a big question.
I know. I really am trying to.
I know.
Yeah.
I have one thing that comes to mind just because it's like on the top of my mind. And I should say I'm in a unique situation because in Lawrence 2 years ago, we won a union for us as paraeducators and also for all our classified staff, all our hourly staff, like our custodians, our food service workers. So I am actually out of the classroom right now because I'm serving as one of our elected union leaders. So my job right now is to go around and talk with paraeducators and with other hourly staff about the work that they do and to organize us to fight for higher wages, to fight for more dignity and respect on the job. And so anyway, so that's just like a little background to the thing I'm going to say, which is that something that's on the top of my mind right now is that last week, I think it was last week, yes, last week for 3 days, paraeducators alongside custodians, food service workers, secretaries in their union of hourly staff in Los Angeles, 30,000 of them struck.
I remember that.
Yeah, which is like such a big deal. And the teachers honored their picket line. The teachers also struck in solidarity with them, which is just such a big deal. And one of the biggest solidarity strikes that's happened in the United States recently. And I guess what I want people to know is like there is a movement across the country growing of hourly school staff like us, like paraeducators that are united for respect and dignity on the job and for higher pay, but also for more money for public schools. Because like this is not just about us and our jobs. We care deeply about our students. It's about us wanting to make higher wages so we don't have to have 2 or 3 jobs and we can actually focus on our students and give them the care and support that they deserve. And like, I just want people to know that like, there is a movement growing across the country, and we're gonna win.
Yeah.
I think, okay, so I'm gonna take it back. So I've been a para for a long time. I don't even remember. I want to say maybe 11 years. I don't even know the exact amount of years I've been a para, but I've done it both. Like I've been a state pre-K para for 7, and then I went into like resource for like a half a semester. But now I'm in self-contained, which is our IC para. So I've been in like gen ed and special ed. For me, just seeing, like, being in the system for a long time, like, preschool and SPED are the 2 programs that are always forgotten, you know.
Can you sped?
It's special education.
Okay.
Well, we call it SPED for short,
yeah.
but, you know.
I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same, I understand you.
So, like, like, those babies, and I do say babies because they are my babies, like, a lot of them I had for, like, years. Those babies are the ones that are forgotten the most. Like, you hear about, you know, gen ed gets this, that, and the other, but I'm like, okay, but what about us? Like, what about the SPED? What about pre-K? Like, we're always forgotten for everything. And that's the thing that people need to realize is that they think preschool is all about babysitting. No, they're actually learning things. Like, preschool is the new kindergarten. And kindergarten is the new first grade. Like, it's changing. And then when you see, like, our self-contained kids, like the kids I have, people are like, oh, that poor, like, no, this child can amaze you. This child can do anything his peers can do. You just have to modify and adapt.
Yeah.
That's so good. That's so good. And, you know, as y'all continue to talk, you know, so here on the South by East, we talk about culture, the scriptures, and everything in between. And it's back to that prefix thing. So in Genesis, it talks about how the woman was made to be man's helpmate. And a lot of people would hear that with today's ears and think, that's kind of demeaning. What do you mean? Well, the same language that's used in Genesis for woman's role in a family is used in the New Testament for the Holy Spirit, the third person of the Trinity, of the alongside helper. The paraclete means the alongside helper. And I think we have lost something in translation. We have lost, and I think because we lost that, because we didn't look at women's role in co-ruling, not being below, but co-ruling with men in the original plan. And so women have had to fight for dignity and worth and value that was already given to them from the beginning. And in the same way, paras have value, dignity, and worth that you have just by being in that role. You don't have to earn it, just like teachers don't have to earn it, just like the students don't have to earn it, whether they are sped or not sped, right? You would tell anybody, hey, my sped kid is just as valuable to this school, and we should think of our paraeducators the same way. And so I hope that's something that comes out of this whole conversation, is that people will begin to realize that and rethink categories that they've put terms into. And think about when we start talking about equality, it extends beyond just like pay for teachers, but y'all guys are fighting for equality for the students also in that recognition. And so I did know that the strike was going on. I'm a news junkie. And so I not so
Me
much
too.
I don't watch a lot of news, but I listen to a lot. I listen to a lot of books and stuff. And so I knew about that and the strike and was listening to podcasts about that. Here's one of the key things though. If the gap is going to be closed between how you are seen, how you are valued, how you are honored, then it has to begin in the schools and then expand to the community. How can the school districts better engage paraprofessionals when it comes to shaping school policies?
I think they need to include us in a lot of things. That's the main thing. Like, I'm fortunate enough to where I have a SPED teacher, or myself, my IC teacher, where she will, because she knows I'm the main one with certain kids all the time, or just with all the kids because I've been with them forever. She'll like, well, can so-and-so do this? What do you think about this for so-and-so for like their IPs? I'm like, and I'll give my input and she'll put it out there, but there are a lot of SPED teachers or even gen ed teachers that won't never include paras, even though we're the only ones that work directly with that one child. We're the only ones that know exactly what that child can and cannot do. So, like, I mean, there are some good gen ed teachers. I've met a few. I've worked with a few, actually, but a lot of times, some teachers don't think we know what we're doing, and
I just find that strange.
So fun. It is.
When I talk to teachers, a lot of them feel unheard and unseen. And man, the story that you just shared, Deidre, like reminds us all that we're capable of the exact thing that we feel has been done to us. We're capable of doing it to someone else because sometimes we lack perspective,
right.
And we lack a view of how we can be contributing to the same problem that affects us. And so, I mean, I just thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that, because that's important. And I think that's going to help some people to think, who am I giving voice to? And what opportunities do I have to share voice with others when I have been neglected from having that voice? You know, you work with those special education kids and students, and in some ways, you help give them voice.
Yeah, because a lot of my kids, especially more this year, a lot of them are nonverbal or non-speaking, so they can't speak up. So I'm more protective this year than ever, and I will speak out with my babies. If something's not right or someone's not treating them right, or whatever the case may be, oh, best believe I'm on it.
Yes.
Me and my teacher, we're on it. I'm like, oh, don't mess with my child. Don't mess with my child.
And Hannah, like, so you lead a union, and I'm gonna tell you, I'm a leader in several spaces, and leading is hard. So, all props to you. Then being an elected official, in this day and age, there's something special. You got some special crowns and jewels stored up for you somewhere. People heard you just a few minutes ago advocating, like, we're striking, we're gonna win. What does that mean? Because we live in a day and age, I'm just gonna be real with you, right? We live in a day and age where people are ready to do marches and strike and picket for everything. Like, man, they took away the Mexican pizza from Taco Bell for a while. Let's strike. You know, what does it mean to win, and what are some important changes that you're advocating for as a part of your union that you see this biggest solidarity strike in history or in the country in a long time? What are we going for?
Ooh, that's a big question. I mean, I think like we should be unabashed about that, like we believe a different world is possible, and this for me personally, I am religious, and so for me personally as a Christian, social justice is a big part of my faith, and so like I believe that Jesus teaches us that a different world is possible, and so that's like for me a motivator to believe, and I think that's like one thing that's so inspiring about this strike and so inspiring about like the work of being a paraeducator and the working in public education right now is that a lot of people are just hopeless. Like I think a lot of people believe that things cannot change, and so I think it's like a really radical thing to bring people together and for people to feel the power of having collective power and being able to create change. Yeah.
But what are we doing with that power? So that's
yeah,
the deal,
yeah,
right?
that's a good question.
Like,
yeah.
I'm gonna take it to another. If you couldn't tell, I'm African American, and that might be a surprise, but I'm African American, right? And I have spent, Brail and I have both spent a lot of our lives in diverse places where I joke and say a lot of times I've been the only speck of pepper in a salt shaker in a whole bunch of places, right? And a lot of times we have gone and felt unheard and mistreated. And like the initial was like, oh, everybody's welcome. We want everybody on board and everything else. We want you to come be a part and help lead that. And you get there and you get treated like a paraprofessional.
Yeah.
And you get treated like you're less than. And like you're unvalued. And you're trying to earn your voice in the room. You're like, why am I trying to earn my voice in the room? I got the same qualifications or more than everybody else in this joker. Ahmaud Arbery happened. And I feel like, well, George Floyd and then Ahmaud Arbery, and I feel like for the first time, people start saying, okay, all right, I missed this thing. What do y'all want? And that's like you said,
right.
and the question is like, that is a hard question. But they were saying like, okay, we're ready to do something now. Tell us. And I felt like our community missed a key moment because we hadn't spent time really developing, like, if they ever say yes. And that's why, like, I have to do a lot of presentations between the church and for Sent. I'm the founder and chairman of the board for a non-religious community development nonprofit, mental health, community health and wellness, education, early childhood education, housing. We create that. So, and I go into presentations with an ask already documented, everything, knowing if this goes well, I tell my team, you got to be prepared if this thing goes well, what we're going to ask for. And I feel like our community, in so many ways, missed an opportunity because there had been no collective organization of, oh, so you really want to know? Well, here's exactly what we want. And so that's why I'm asking, like, if there's somebody listening today saying, you know what, I realized something, maybe we're not valuing that paraprofessional the way that we should. What would it look like to value them?
Yeah, and so like go back to the thing you said. Like, so I'm actually biracial. My mom is Hispanic, as you know, and she's Hispanic, but she looks like she's white. Let's just be real. But I love my mom. She knows. I tell all the time. But my dad's African American. So I actually went from like pre-K through 6th grade. I actually lived with my grandparents because my mom's a single parent, and we went to Shawnee Heights School District. And like you were saying, me, my sister, Nick, his sister, and another little girl, like the only person of color in that back then, the only person of color in that school. And I was also in special education because I have ADHD. So I think for me, I see what a good para is because I'm actually still connected with a few of my parents in elementary school and one of my spec teachers from elementary school. But I've also seen how my mom fought and advocated for me from Shawnee Heights and how she was not giving up. And she said, you do not settle for less. Like, you fight for what you want. You prove them wrong, and you go out there and you do your best. Like, she never once said it was okay for me to use my learning disability as a crutch. Like, that was never okay. So, like, because of that, I had to work harder. Like, it brought my work, like, I work harder, pay attention, and, like, you know, now I graduate with honors from Highland Park High School. I graduate top 30% of Highland Park High School. Like, I was in, like, everything known to me in Highland Park High School. Well, like, a little too much. But, like, she taught me, like, you need to advocate for what's right, and you need to speak up if something's not okay. And she's the one that taught me, like, all that stuff. And I saw my parents working hard to provide for me and gave me the opportunity to succeed in life.
And that's an incredible story of you having that experience and it impacting you. And that's a part of I have ADHD. My wife calls it my superpower. But
I mean, yeah, I'm just like learning, like, that's how it's strange sometimes.
I also have ADHD, so yes, I do feel like a little superpower.
Because she says, like, because I'm listening to books and stuff while I'm working on other stuff. She's like, that's because of your superpower. And but in that same, like, I go back to this, and maybe we come back to it later. What should we be fighting for? Is it a certain percentage raise? Because that was one of the deals, like, let's go to finance real quick, right? Because this is important to come to one of the conversations. Companies, most HR departments would rather give you, if you're negotiating salary for a job, they would rather give you more vacation time than more salary. Because most people work harder before vacation and work harder when they come back. Because they feel guilty that they're leaving their coworkers and feel guilty that they've been gone. So you work real hard. Two, they would rather give you a bonus than a salary increase. Well, you know that bonus is taxed differently, so you're going to get less of that joker.
Yep.
And they don't have to it doesn't keep adding and accumulating. And so, like, is it a certain percentage? Also, like, I tell people all the time from the stage in service, one person needs one job. I think part of what's led to the breakdown of our society is too many people have turned their hobby into their side hustle. Everything in your life doesn't need to be a side hustle. You need a hobby that's a release. And I think that has worn on our mental health and on the health of our families and our relationships because we live too hurried of lives where we don't have time. Most people, this is why y'all are special. Most people will never get the attention that y'all give to that student. Most people will never have someone pour that kind of time and attention into who they are, into looking and caring for them. And that's why we have so many people hurting. It's because what you're giving, they're not getting. And while you may be able to get yourself up every once in a while, if you are not full yourself, it's hard to pour into others from an empty pot. And if you're working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet and provide, you're not going to have any, it's going to be hard for you to be filled. And then you start feeling the toll of it. And guess what? Guess who else gets affected? Those students. They don't get the best care because you're not your best you.
Yeah, I really think that's why wages do matter, is so that we can have educators, whether it's paraeducators or teachers, and other adults in the building, like our custodians, our secretaries, everybody needs to be making a living wage. So, like, as you talked about, we can have just one job. That's also, I think, should be a founding principle of any society. Is like, you should be able to survive and not have to be, like, in a horrible financial situation, just so, you know, the really rich in our society can get richer.
And I don't think people realize that for paras, we don't get paid in the summer. So we have to find a summer job, which for me, I'm fortunate enough because I'm a camp counselor for special education kids. So, you know, but I mean, the downfall is I don't get paid. I get paid less for that anyways, but, you know, it's a tit for tat for me. Like, I still go with special education kids, but, you know, I have to still get up every day at 6:30.
Here's a bit of information. So I lived in Texas before I came up. And my previous background, I was a chemical engineer, project manager, okay? And I walked away from that career to raise missionary salary to work full-time in a community just like Hi-Crest, but they're in Texas. When I raised my salary, people said, well, what do you want to make a year? I said, I only want to make what a school teacher in my community makes. And so that's what I raised. And so I went from an engineer salary to a school teacher salary. But I had paid off all my debt, all my student loans. I sold my nicer car, drove a beat up car, like the back window of the truck leaked. It smelled like the dog of the previous owner. I mean, I just reduced I got LASIK, so I wouldn't have to keep buying glasses. I did everything I could to reduce my source of living so I could live on that new salary. When I got ready to move up here, just a string of unfortunate events happened that caused my family to have to move. They asked me, what do you want to make? I said, I only want to make what a school teacher makes in my community. And they said, we can't pay you that because your family won't be able to live if we pay you what a school teacher makes.
Yeah.
Think about that, right? When I got ready to move my family here, they asked me what I want to make, and I said, I only want to make what a school teacher makes. And they said, we knowingly cannot pay you that because your family would not be able to make it. My question in my head was, then why is it okay that teachers are making that?
And then you don't think about the stuff that they buy out of pocket to supply classrooms either.
That's why we do our teacher supply drive here we do a teacher supply drive.
Decorate the classrooms, make it look nice sometimes. It's just, it's a lot of stuff that people don't realize that comes out of people's pockets.
Exactly. Yeah. And some people was asking, why do we pull out of the school supply drive at the beginning of the school year for kids? Is because we saw the gap for teachers. We said, here's our philosophy as a church. We say, okay, a parent spends more time with that kid than anyone else. So our primary place that we try to pour resources is into the parent. Next to the parent, the school spends more time with that kid than anyone else. So that's why we've done, we partner well with your school. We do a lot of things in the community. We do the teacher supply drive to, hey, buy all these supplies. You just come get them for free. Do whatever you need for your class. We ask teachers what they want for their classes. Come do it. Then we say, after the parents are taken care of and after the school has been taken care of, then we look for what we do here on campus at the church. Because we get less time. So who has the opportunity to make the deepest impact? Parents, schools, then us. Because of the amount of time with that student. And so we say, if we can influence the teachers and walk beside them and they're healthy, they're going to be pointing to the kids. That's going to affect them. If we can walk beside the parents and they're healthy, then they're going to be pointing to the kids. Mm-hmm. That's just going to help what we want to accomplish also, right? And we're showing value and worth all along the way. We want to help people, not just the cute, cuddly ones, that are small, right? And so I just think that's important, how we think about that and think about multi-level solutions that are really healthy and sustainable. Because I used to be a youth pastor at one time, and one of my mentors told me, Jonathan, either you're going to leave them or they're going to leave you at some point, right? And at some point, right, that kid is going to, I'm hoping, they're going to progress on, and it makes me sad to think about my kids not going to be in my house at some point, but they're going to progress on, right? And so if I'm thinking in a healthy mindset in ministry, I got to be doing sustainable ministry by pointing to the places that are going to continue to help them develop and take their next step. So what makes the work of a paraprofessional so challenging? That's what we're going to discuss right after this break. All right.
Are you interested in podcasting, audio, or visual media, and just don't know how to get started or take your content to the next level? Then Studio 104 was built just for you. A fully functioning audio-visual podcast studio, industry-level equipment, and an affordable price to help you make that album you always wanted, start that podcast, or even share the story of how your business is impacting the community. Book your session along with a free consultation today at www.fellowshiphighcrest.com/studio104.
All right, we are back from the break. And right before the break, we started broaching the topic of what makes the work of a paraprofessional so challenging. So give us a little insight on that.
I think for me, because I work in a high trauma, low income school, So a lot of these kids, I've always tell anyone new that comes to school, these kids have faced more trauma in their lives than the age of 5. Mm-hmm. And it's sad to think about it when you really think about it. So I think for us, we have a system called MANT, which is basically how you can, if you need to restrain a child, you can legally, and safely. But like the first part of me is talk about how building the relationship with the child. And so like, for example, like your kids, they were in kindergarten. I wasn't even in their classes at all. Like I have no kindergarten that year. But for some reason, they wasn't like listening, and I would just go up to them and I was like, hey, can we just go to class? And your daughter was like, sure. And I had to walk her to class every day for 2 weeks because she wouldn't go to anybody else. And then I got close with your son, and like when they would come to school, I had to be the one get them out the car. Like no one else could, and because we just built that relationship, you know. And if someone needed them to do something, they weren't like having a bad day, they'll come get me, and I'm like, what's wrong? And we'll talk about it, you know, because I'm building that relationship with them. Like, you can't go into my school without them knowing who I am. It's kind of scary and sad at the same time.
and thank you. Hannah, you don't know this. We fostered to adopt sibling group of 3. And, they have been through a lot. And so we've had them now since my youngest was 10 months, and he's 6 now. He'll turn 7 this summer. And so, and it was rough. I mean, and as a parent, man, we had a lot of walks of shames and emails, and just knowing that they had people on campus that connected with them, that they felt safe with, helped us as parents trying to do all we could do. And that's what people don't realize is they'll write stories about those parents don't care, or they this, and I was like, man, we're involved. You know, we're not on drugs. We're not this or that, and we're doing absolutely everything we know how to do. And our kids, they have needs.
People don't see, like, they only see the child. They don't try and, like, discover the backstory of a child.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, this child may be acting this way. There's a reason why. There's a reason why they're acting like this. They have to trust you. I have a little girl who doesn't trust any adult. But she trusts me, and she trusts the other teacher in the classroom. We're the only 2 people she trusts because of her trauma in her life. Yeah. Like it's really sad to think about it.
Yeah.
Hannah, how do the challenges that a paraprofessional faces in their work impact their life outside of work?
I mean, you know, over the last few years, as we've started bargaining our contracts and really, you know, having that same level of power that like teachers typically have had because they've had unions in this state for a lot longer. Every year we talk to all of our members about, you know, how does it impact your life that you make somewhere between $11 and $16 an hour. And people, you know, have shared all kinds of things. Like people sleep in their cars, people live on friends' couches or family members' couches. Their own children are on food stamps. And, you know, most people work 2 and 3 jobs, or have some kind of side hustle, like you said, that's like something they're doing on the weekend, like driving Uber or doing Instacart. So that, I think, you know, that, especially if you and many of our pairs are in this situation, if you have your own children, that puts pressure on your family, and makes it hard for you to be there for your own children, much less to show up for the children you work with every day. And yet, you know, the thing that I think is like so cool and important about paras is like paras will tell us like, yeah, I can't afford to do this job, but I'm still doing it because I love the kids so much and I care so much about seeing these kids succeed. And like, yeah, so I think it's deeply affected, the low pay especially and the like lack of respect is deeply affecting people's lives. And our people are still showing up every day because they care about their community and they care about their kids.
Yeah, and I part of the reason I ask that is like I wear a semicolon on my wrist, right? And just the weight of walking with people and dealing with their hurt sometimes gets heavy. And like a under-resourced, high trauma neighborhood, and then you take it beyond with the students that you're working with, the needs that they have, and the things that you're dealing with. And I tell people, like I've gotten to tour some aircraft carriers and some submarines and different things of that nature, and they have these big doors, and when you walk in one, you kind of turn it and you lock it and it seals off completely airtight from this. So in case you're underwater or whatever and you start taking on water in one thing, they can seal off that part of the vessel and still live. And a lot of us believe that we are like that.
Yeah.
That we can walk out of the school building, close the door, turn it, and seal, right? But the truth is, like, y'all both start going there. Y'all know, right? It's like you leak.
Yeah.
It leaks into
It
other
does.
areas.
Yeah.
And I have, like, the thing that saved me was my wife is a therapist, and she got me connected with a therapist where I was able to now have a regular place to process all the hurt that I was exposed to, including my own. Is that kind of thing available for parents?
Not that I've never heard anything, but like I'm fortunate enough to where I have a best friend who is a teacher. So, we met at Ross. So, like if I had like a bad day, because I do have a student that does like to get aggressive, more towards adults, or he'll go after other kids, and I'll literally put myself in front to block them, because I'd rather I get her than they. And so I'll just call her, and we'll be like, literally, I'm not kidding. I think the longest time we talked about my issues were like 7 hours because we call all the time. But I have like, people at work, and other things like that I can just get it out and just they get what I'm going with because they see it every day.
And I have friends and stuff, and I just wonder like what would that help for parents to have regular access. So like one of the things we do here is we at the church we have an SEL, a social emotional learning team here. And we incorporate that into our children's ministry, into different things. And we, even if you don't have insurance, we make therapy available if you're connected with us. Then Scent, the nonprofit, has a mental health department that works on a scale, adjustable scale, all the way down to $5 an hour for therapy. And if you are 50% or below that of the area median income, then it's just free.
Wow.
So you can get ongoing care. And I'm just wondering, would that impact
I think
the quality
it would,
of life?
but I don't think people really like. I love therapy. Like I'm so for it. But I don't think people are like there yet. Some people are not there yet.
That's true. You got to get to that place.
Yeah. I'm all about when you go to therapy. Like I'm all for therapy because I know it helps. But I think some people don't want to ask or just say that I need help.
Yeah, I think so too. But I do think I think it would
Having
help.
Because there's a difference between availability and accessibility.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to make it not only available, but accessible. And Hi-Crest is a mental health desert, and so that's why we started the services here to make that available. But the person has to be ready, right? Because it's their journey, and you don't want to force them into something that they're not ready for. And so that's important. But I just wonder, because that was a tremendous part of my journey and me becoming a healthier leader, was just having... Because I didn't want my wife to have to function like my therapist. She shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
I didn't want my friends to have to function like my therapist because they shouldn't have to. They should be able to be my friend and not my therapist.
Yeah.
And then just feeling like, okay, I don't feel like trash because something I experienced at work today is making me hard to attach to my kids this evening. And having a place where I can go and talk about that and digest that.
I think, like, especially for those, like, are in, like, the baser and, like, those stuff, it's hard to have someone to talk to somebody because they can't relate to what you're talking about. They don't experience it the way, like, my coworkers were because they've seen how this kid has attacked me and other people, so they get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's where my wife helped me, and what we say a lot of times is even for people that don't go to her for therapy, one of the big things she provides for the community is saying, okay, based on what you're dealing with, here's who I recommend. Because, like, she was at another agency when I first had my need. And I said, well, I'll just call your office and get with it. And she's like, no, you can't. Because no one there will understand your story and what you're going through. And you'll get re-traumatized by having to retell everything.
Yeah.
So she helped me find the right therapist for where I was at that I didn't have to tell airy gory detail for them to understand what I was dealing with. And that's a key part of finding the right therapist for you, not just walking into anybody.
Yeah.
And having even somebody that can say, hey, you know what, that's not that's not what I specialize in, but I know some people that I can connect you with that will help you. And I just think even things like that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in what ways are paraprofessionals compensated for their work, and what challenges does that bring to recruiting and keeping paraprofessional
Well,
staff?
unfortunately, we're not compensated for our
Yeah.
work. But I have to say, like for my job, it is very rewarding in some aspects of the thing. Like I do have kids, like I've been saying, like that are from low functioning. Like I have like students who like have been through a lot of trauma, but you know, I have one girl who's been through trauma with her mom. Dad had them. For some reason, mom took them, was not feeding them, clothing them. Like it was bad. And then dad finally got, you know, enough to say, I'm getting my kids back, and they've been good ever since. And so just with her, because I love this child. She's my favorite. I'm just gonna say that. I love this kid. I mean, I say she's my child regardless, but because of her, like my niece. So I have 2 nieces, and their clothes that they outgrow every year, clothes, shoes. I take all their stuff and I take it to school. I have another girl who will be in the 6th grade next year. It's so sad. And she's the same thing. Like her mom's single parent, tons of siblings, and she doesn't get the care she deserves. And so, like, sometimes she comes to clothes that are too big or too small, or she needs to bathe. And so I take her back, and I just go through that talk with her. And I give her, like, all my nieces, the 13-year-old, all of her old clothes. I give the other one, my 8-year-old's old clothes. And when she got new, like, boots that my niece only wore twice, her face just lit up. She wore them for a week, and there was no snow in the ground. So I knew she loved them. Yeah. And her dad was so grateful for these. Like I had totes of clothes, and her dad was so grateful because that means he can save money for her birthday or Christmas or whatever was coming up.
Yeah. How does it lead? Well, you're a union. You know, you're a union president, a union chair, union leader. How I'm pretty sure the school district probably brings you in and says, like, Allison, like, we need some more paraprofessionals. We need you to
what are you gonna do?
Help us.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do to get us some more people in here? And you're like, how do you answer? Like,
I'm like, you gotta pay us more. You want to hire people, you gotta pay us more.
I think training would work too.
Yes, yeah.
We're not trained.
Yes.
What?
No,
Yes.
you're literally just thrown in there.
That's absolutely
Figure it out, go.
Yeah.
You know what I tell,
Yeah.
like, when I was in the chemical industry, I did some recruiting, and even now I pour into a lot of young people and speak to college students and stuff. One of the things I always tell them to look for is a company that invests in them. So, like, even here with my staff, we spend, like, a good amount investing in in their development, in their next step. That's building the studio was because, bro, that was an investment. And so, like, that disturbs me to think they're not investing in your next step and in your growth. Like, that's really important because that makes up sometimes for a place that doesn't pay you the most, where if you know, like, I'm going to become more valuable to myself and the company being here because they put so much into me that if I do decide to leave, my resume is going to be like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't train us. I mean, if you're lucky enough to get hired in July, you may get a PD, but honestly, that PD doesn't do anything.
Right.
Like, we don't look forward to those at all. They don't pertain to what we do.
I will say that's like a thing that, you know, we talk about the union difference, like what does it mean to be in a union job versus a non-union job? And one of the things we did win in our contract in the first year was 2 paid days of professional development.
Okay.
And that, you know, like similar to y'all, sometimes professional development is not the best, but over the last 2 years, it has definitely improved. And part of that has been that the other thing we won in our contract was a committee to have paras involved, and we haven't gotten all the way to having that committee like fully formed, but for, you know, because we have a union, the administration does come to us and they ask, they say, what kinds of things would paras like to see at professional development this year? And so,
I like a list of things.
yeah, right,
My
exactly.
wife
That's
came
the
and did
thing.
TBI
That's
training
the
for y'all
thing.
guys.
Yeah. I like that, but it was like over Zoom, so it's just
Yeah.
like.
Oh, yeah, Zoom.
What, have y'all done like capturing kids' hearts or different things of that nature? I got some friends connected with some of that. I'm hoping that they view this and that they throw us a lifeline here in Topeka and also in Lawrence to help some of our paraprofessionals get capturing kids' hearts here in town.
Because we have a lot of kids with like high need, low functioning. A lot of people don't know what that means, but like your kids with Down syndrome, autism, like kids that are in wheelchairs, all that stuff. And there is not a single PD besides autism that involves any of that. So unless you've been in that field for so long, then you know what to do. But it's just like you have people who make great paras, who deserve to be paras.
Absolutely.
And you have people who become paras that probably should not be paras.
Man.
What is a PD?
A professional development.
Yeah. And so request that TBI training again in person. She does it in person too. I think we were still dealing with pandemic stuff.
We'll talk to Nick later about that.
But you can't boil the ocean, right? You can't boil the ocean. You can't get everything. And that's one of the deals. Today, the day that we shot this, Brail and I met with the city, and we're helping to form a teen work program for our community. And Bro reached out, because it's not going to only be, like, we made sure to include elements where it's not just a job. We're going to do professional development with the kids throughout, starting with age 14 all the way throughout. They're going to get regular professional development during the 6-week summer program. And that was important to us. But Braille reached out and said, hey, I'm looking for some guys that can help teach some people how to tie ties. And their immediate response was, well, it would be better if we had this and that. And it's like, well, this is an opportunity here for something that we've heard the community talk about. And rather than celebrating this opportunity that's before us, it was, this is what it's not. And I say all that to say, man, I can't write a check. Remember what I asked for.
The teacher's salary. You're not writing checks on that.
I can't write a check. I can hug you. But my question is, as we end, this is where I want to end. When have you felt most known, seen, and heard? And I'm asking you this so that people that you know that's connected to your school districts, when they might listen to this or view it, they can repeat those things.
I think for me, it's this year. It's this year.
And what was it?
Our admin team. We have a great admin team this year. And because I have that one student that is so, like, aggressive, like...
What do they do that makes them so great?
This year, it's been, like, this year's been the rough year for my room in general. But my admin team this year, from the principal to our dean of students, like, anytime I walkie, I need help or I need assistance, they come running. Sometimes it is 2 people, sometimes it is the principal, the vice principal of my grade, and the dean of students all in one.
Man.
They come running because they see, like, oh, Miss Augusto, you are a great asset to our school. We want you to stay, so we're trying to help you out. Like, and Nick even, my principal was like, have you thought about becoming a teacher? I'm like, yes, I have. I'm actually enrolled in school right now for it. And he's like, well, I'll offer you a job as soon as you graduate. I'm like, that's great. But he's just like, I don't know. He's there for, like, he's there for his staff as well. I've had principals, I don't know, like, they change all the time. And I've had good ones and I've had not so good ones. And I've had principals that are just, they're not there for staff. But this year, our admin team is there for our staff. And they want to help staff and they want staff to feel appreciative and safe.
Oh, man. Feeling appreciated and safe by your admin team on campus. What about you, Hannah?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, similarly, I'm trying to think of like in the classroom experiences. I started out in a classroom before I became a union leader. The whole time that I've worked in our district, I've been in the same classroom, and it's called it's a classroom for students with mental health issues. So everything you said about therapy, like, and everything you said about trauma, really, is connected. I feel like to kind of like what have become my beliefs about what students need. Right? Is that like students need support for mental health. Like we cannot ignore that. But so our students, have learning disabilities, but also have mental health issues. And I actually got invited by a former teacher to come and work in that specific classroom, and that's the classroom I've worked in the whole time I've been in the district. And, it's really similar to what you said. That teacher was like, just incredibly invested in us, like supported our union drive, supported each of us to seek out other training opportunities if we couldn't get them inside the district, supported us just like personally, like knew about our lives, cared about us, like knew our families. And yeah, I do think that is definitely, having someone in your day-to-day job environment who cares. Wow. Absolutely. Yeah.
So it goes back to relationship, goes back to just really what you want for your kids, being known and loved, and at the same time, and just that investment. And I think we get caught up sometimes on thinking, well, I can't really do anything because I can't write the check. And with y'all guys, I just think you opened this huge door to say, you can care. In the same way that a paraprofessional.
Because you'd be amazed how many kids will still remember who you are.
Yeah.
I have, oh my God, I think realize I have kids students are, I think sophomore, juniors in high school from when I started in preschool, and they still remember who I am, and they, sometimes at games, we're in the hall, and I just have to say their name once, and I just say, go sit down, like, okay, Miss Guesta, and they just go sit down, like, you don't back out, Miss Guesta, we need to go sit down. She's like, go sit. Like, they will remember because that's the impact I have on them, because, sometimes you can be the only affection and the love and hug that a student has all day.
Yeah. And y'all guys need the same thing. Thank you, Deidre and Hannah, for joining us today in the intersection. Now we're going to toss it out to our debrief.
Man, John, that interview was something special, man.
It was.
That was something special, man.
It was.
That quote Hannah said, she said, I think we should be unabashed about saying, I think a better world is possible.
Yeah, but bro, where does it leave us when we beat down our change makers? You had, I don't know if you noticed the inflection at one point where Deidre was describing a situation, and Hannah said, hey, for us with a union, these are some things we actually get. Man, it is like, even in the have-nots, you still have the haves and the have-nots.
Still a class difference. Yeah.
And it was one of those deals where you could see Hannah wanting more for Deidre and the other paraprofessionals. And then it's like, well, why do we have to come to that to get what we deserve anyway, right? Why do we have to do that, right?
But I think that's part of that better world. Like in episode 2, Jake described, he's like, hey, we got to know what story we want to tell. To shape the educational system, we got to know what story it is we want to tell. And then in episode 3, Frank started describing what it could look like, what it could be, what he's doing. And then we saw in episode 4, Dr. Carell was like, I've done it. Like, I'm actually doing it. And we've seen the impact and the change. And then in episode 5, you see people who are part of the same system going like, is there a better, there's gotta be a better way.
But the deal is we all, like a large part of our role says that a rising tide lifts all ships.
Yeah.
So we have this trickle down economics thing that we apply to all these different areas of life.
Yeah.
And so I feel like as good and as high as we saw with Coffeeville, we saw the low with
our paraprofessionals.
With our paraprofessionals, and saying somehow there's something in the sand that's preventing the water from trickling down. And so when we ask that question, man, about how is this affecting your outside life, and just the mental health aspect, and how, oh man, I'm like, no, we don't have access to this, we don't have these things, and I'm using friends and different things of that nature for.
I know parents whose own kids are on food stamps. They can't provide for their own family, and they're taking care of other people's children.
I know this season is about education, bro, but I just don't believe people with full-time jobs should be living like that.
I don't either.
And I think, man, there's something wrong, and I think it's a conversation I came out of coming into this. And my wife is kind of becoming famous for this quote of "There's no behavior for no reason." And so I said that doesn't just apply to kids, but also adults. And so taking the time to ask, hey, what is causing this behavior that we're seeing? And then how can we support you better? Letting people know we care more about them than just what they do, and asking those questions of what is affecting you, what things are troubling you that's causing maybe some of these behaviors we're seeing. And they are, we would like to think that just because our age is growing, that all facets of us are growing at the same rate. But I wore a size 15, right? As a young kid, that's a grown man size shoe.
Yeah, it is.
And so, but I wasn't a grown man. I was still a kid.
Right.
And in some ways, man, it's like just dealing with the trauma and different things in our lives. Hearing Deidre like talk about like, well, me, Deidre, and Hannah all expressed dealing with ADHD, right? And trying to overcome stuff. And man, when you have a story or something like that, it causes you to strive a lot. Strive to try to prove yourself.
Yep.
And sometimes, man, you could be, instead of being able to say, hey, you haven't given me what's required to do what I am being asked to do. Yeah. You like, I'm gonna show you anyway.
I gotta make it. I gotta push to that place.
I'm gonna prove, right?
Yeah.
And man, if you create work environments where your employees are steady having to prove themselves, especially if those employees are caring for others, whether it's in a restaurant business or in a early childhood education or a public education school system or any business, the people that they're supposed to care for are also going to be victims of that same soil that they're in. Yep. They're going to feel like they always have to
make it. I gotta pull something out of nothing.
And what it does is, man, it ups the level of stress. And we don't make our best decisions when we are in situations like that, man.
And it creates in an environment that should be cultivating community and growth. It creates a meritocracy where the most talented, the most skilled, the luckiest rise to the top and become heralded as the example, as right. Like, why aren't you like this one? Like, you see the impact that this paraprofessional had on the same salary as you, and it creates that environment that you're talking about where you're constantly trying to strive to be the exception instead of having an exceptional environment.
Bro, Deidre is in one of the most under-resourced schools in our city. When we said, man, when have you felt most known, seen or heard? She didn't ask for a grant writer for their school. She didn't ask for all these shiny things. She simply said an admin team who listens.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, like, yes, the problems that we face are complex, and some problems are a lot easier to solve. But it's simply sometimes the simplest solutions cost us the most. Because we are so driven by numbers and measuring things that don't really matter, we don't have time to make sure that our staffs are supported sometimes.
Yeah.
And we sometimes neglect our families. And the truth of it is that we need some hard work.
Yeah.
And it's a lot harder to acknowledge the hard work that we need and to actually go do the hard work that's going to be required to implement the simple solution.
Man, and when you were talking about like what we measure, right, the impact, this episode was super transformative for me because it caused me to think about my own experience growing up. So I was an IEP kid, so I always had some kind of extra assistance. I didn't have a para. I had a learning disability, and I also was in the gifted program. And so I kind of hit on both sides, both ends of the special education realm. And I was always drawn to people who had problems because like my problems weren't very apparent, but they were to me. Like I knew. And so it's like I would always be drawn. And so one of my best friends at elementary school was a student who had gotten into a car accident. I'm talking like second, third grade, got into a car accident and it had changed the way his mind works. And so he was developmentally behind and had some different issues. So he had a para. And I would always be next to him, and I remember his para. Like I would go with him, I'd help his para do stuff, and we would I just partner with him because when I watched, I wanted to care for him the way that his para cared for him. Yeah. I wanted to be patient with him the way that she was patient with him. I wanted to assist him, to walk alongside him the way that she did. And when I looked back and thought about my own experience, I'm like, a large portion of, like, my shape is a part of it, but a large portion of my personality, a lot of the traits that people say are strong in me as a leader, they come from that para. From watching the way that para walked with that student. And I was with them for 3 years, bro. Like 3 years, I walked with that student and walked with that para, and it had a profound impact on who I am as an adult and as a community leader. What are we measuring?
But what do we say, though, here on the FAC side of things is everyone a minister, everywhere a ministry.
Yeah.
Man, you don't have to sit in the right seat to bring about change.
Yeah.
That's a misnomer.
Yep.
You don't have to sit in the right seat to bring about change, man.
Yeah.
And you don't need a large platform to bring about change. You don't need a lot of money to bring about change.
No.
You don't need a certain amount of votes to bring about change.
Yeah.
You do need to love the people, see the need, serve the will of God to bring about change.
Yep. Yep. And I hope that's what people pull, for one, hearing the story of some unsung heroes.
Yeah.
But then for two, seeing the impact of even some of those that we have neglected the most as society.
Yeah.
And that they're having some of the greatest impact on some of our families.
And loving it.
And loving it. Choosing to come back.
And loving it.
This episode wasn't a complaint. I walked away like, I'm mad. And then they were just like,
how much they love.
Can't wait to get back to work. The bro, that when we left, they're outside talking. Outside still talking about how great it is to be in their position.
Yeah. We can learn something from everyone if we will listen.
I hope you've been as impacted by this as I have. We got one more round. As we wrap it all back up here in 2 weeks. We'll see you in the intersection.
Thank you for tuning into the South by East podcast, where we meet you at the intersection of culture and community. For more information on resources shared, check the show notes, and we'll see you at the next intersection. We out.